and welcome to the birth of a new dimension. You know, I recorded this episode 46, and even though if you're familiar with my broadcast, I pause several times throughout the recording in order to save my work, technological gremlins have eaten my broadcast, so I am going to try to recreate and re-record what I spoke about before. First of all, introduction. Thank you for joining me. This is Birth of a New Dimension. I call it that because this is preparing the ground for the planting of the seed of humans' consciousness, Earth surface humans, entering into a new dimension. The new dimension is a higher dimensional state of consciousness, and it will be a world of new rules. So in order to navigate that world well, and in order to meet well the consciousness, the beings that occupy that realm, it is necessary to get prepared. That's why I do this broadcast. That is why I do my artwork. That's why I share this information. It is to prepare Earth surface humans for the coming together of consciousness and the combination of matter and energy. So because so much of the information that I wish to convey today is graphically oriented and something that it is very hard to merely describe in words, I'm splitting up the broadcast, doing the first half of the broadcast about consciousness concepts, and the last 20 minutes will be in conjunction with a presentation on the visual whiteboard at EduCreations, and you can access the link in the Twitter feed for Birth of a New Dimension. So first of all, if you like, go to ucy.tv/FRL. This is the UCY homepage for Birth of a New Dimension. Look all the way to the left of your screen and you should find the Twitter feed at Birth Dimension, where you can click on all of those links in order to look at my artwork and look at some of my animations and videos, because even though I paint a picture with my voice, sometimes I really need to use actual physical paper and pencil to depict what I'm trying to depict. And the concepts that I'm speaking about here are concepts of higher dimensional reality. It's hard to even call it space because it is a higher dimension, and space is only a part of that higher dimension. So on previous broadcasts, I did a lot speaking about the 0th dimension and how we create the first dimension, second dimension, third dimension, and then what the 4th dimension even is, that the 4th dimension is a timeline, but that we are submerged within a sea of possibilities and probabilities. And those uncollapsed waveforms are of the 5th dimension and higher. Those uncollapsed waveforms are the world of consciousness that has not yet been created into objects and contexts that can be experienced by awareness. When I draw these pictures, I am drawing the non-physical energy presence of one's consciousness. So this is the energy field that surrounds and interpenetrates your physical presence, and it is made of all the possibilities and probabilities of your life. So when I get into the recorded whiteboard, I will do a lot with drawings, but first let me describe that the time vortex, the bundle of timelines that is your life, is bundled together with the timelines of other versions of you that are living other lives. So the first thing is the concept from this graphic depiction, from my diagram, that first of all, energy and consciousness emanates from the source and returns back to the source, and that each one of us has a doorway to infinity inside. Each one of us has a convergence of our chakras, which are all harmonically nested chakras in harmonic proportions, and that where they converge, this is like the place where the fabric of reality has been stretched to an infinite level, making it the infinite point where all of these doorways meet. So I'm going to be speaking about the stellar network of consciousness that one travels upon instead of using a clank metal spaceship to get places. And your own personal connection to this stellar network is through your own doorway to infinity, the singularity that you have at the direct center of your own being. So the planet that you're on, Earth, she has a doorway to infinity at her core. The star that you see above us, the sun, that star has a doorway to infinity at its core, as does every single other star. Every single galaxy has at its center a supermassive black hole that, through attraction and gravitational consciousness glue, holds everything together. Every single atom has a singularity at its center. Every single one of your cells has a doorway to infinity or a connection to the singularity at its center in its nucleus. This is to say that true experts of consciousness do not travel in a clank metal spaceship the way that you get into a metal car and drive down the road to get to the grocery store. Oh, no, ha ha ha, I laugh at that assertion, that true travelers of consciousness utilize the stellar network. In order to utilize the stellar network, in order to travel through space, it's necessary to run what would be called a program of consciousness, or to have a foundation understanding of the structure of what is possible. It is also necessary to cultivate one's non-physical energy presence until you are in conformity with the harmonic structure or the higher consciousness presence of the cosmos within which one is submerged. In short, it's very difficult to do, and you can understand why less sophisticated, less advanced beings who haven't cultivated their consciousness would create something that's just similar to a car, but a physical vehicle to fly their physical vehicles across space and get to where they need to go. In previous recordings, I have even stated that if you need to use a clank metal spaceship to fly off of the surface of your planet, you are not ready to leave the surface of your planet. This is like a firewall or a protective mechanism that was created by consciousness so in the cosmos, so that as nascent consciousness is developing, it needs to develop to the right level of sophistication before it begins to spread and interact with other consciousnesses in other places. And if you require metal or external technology in order to leave your planet and bring your physical container for consciousness and your consciousness to meet with other consciousness, then you're not ready to meet with other consciousness yet. This whole broadcast that I do, and the reason why I'm here, it is called Birth of a New Dimension. It is to prepare Earth surface human culture for meeting consciousness from other places, and that might be moving at vastly different rates. So this is also about understanding higher dimensions. What's up there or out there? So I really would like to focus on this idea of the bridge of love, or love as this resonant feature for the network of stellar consciousness. And also understanding that stars have a lifespan, and that the stellar network of consciousness is connected to the trajectory of a star's consciousness. So each one of us, you and I as individuals, we have a consciousness trajectory. We are coming from the source, the zeroth dimension, the everything of all that is, the presence of everything. And we come here into this physical realm through these other concomitant levels until we reach the physical, and we become dense matter and have all sorts of experiences. And the intention for us as containers for consciousness was to be a real-time broadcaster, telling the sun at every moment about your experience here on the planet, submerged within this level of density, broadcasting through your consciousness to the solar central consciousness. Hey, this is what it's like for me to sit. This is what it's like for me to move my arms and legs, or to breathe, or to drink water. This is what it's like. And because of the hacked human operating system, the mind that is known as the human mind, the verbal, conscious, daily waking intellect, which I say it is hacked because it is something that has been repurposed from its original use and intent. And in this case, by beings that wish to limit your capacity to think and to perceive and to travel on the network of stellar consciousness. That hacked operating system prevents humans from connecting in real time, instantaneous broadcasts to the sun. And it's basically because you're constantly verbalizing inside. When there is no inner silence, the connection of consciousness between you as an individual experiencer and the being that gave birth to you and emanated you is fuzzy or diminished or much less. So those memories and those emotional experiences, they are saved, like you can imagine being saved on a big hard drive or neurological hard drive. And then at the end of one's life, you turn in your hard drive to the sun. And in the later part of the broadcast, in the visual presentation, you'll see what I'm speaking about when you talk about the final denouement of a person's life. It is when they take all of their collected experiences of moving through time from the moment of birth up until they die. And when you die, your ego is unmade and your consciousness is unfurled like a skein of yarn. And all of those experiences are finally broadcast to the sun. A bit too late to be relevant. It's all kind of a moot point at that point because you're no longer submerged in time. So you were submerged in time, had all sorts of experiences, then went back to the source and told the source about what you experienced, but the source says, I cannot change or amend your trajectory at this point. So the real value is when we are able to do a real-time broadcast through inner silence and tell the sun, the great emanatrix, this is what I'm experiencing down here, because it was intended that we be like the race car drivers of a, fancy race car. P.S. If you don't know it, having a human body and being submerged within the physical is like having a fancy race car. You're very lucky to have this vehicle. And it was intended for you to be connected, like imagined by a little headset and microphone, to your own higher self, to your own sense of consciousness that resides in a higher dimensional state. And that level of consciousness is designed to guide you as you are driving around in your race car. That can tell you, hey, watch out, there's an accident coming up ahead, or you might need to reduce your speed, or you might want to change your lane. And also to tell you when it's time to come in and service your car, and then your quote-unquote pit crew helps to change your tires and fix your lug nuts and all of that. And this is what your higher dimensional self is meant to do. Each night when you go to sleep, that your pit crew is doing exactly that. Your higher dimensional self is fixing, healing, righting, regenerating, and nourishing your cellular structure. And that only happens when we fall asleep at night because of dun-dun-dun, like what I've just said to you, the hacked operating system that is constantly verbalizing during your daily waking consciousness. You're talking with your mind so much that your cells of your body are having difficulty connecting to the source. And it is only when you stop talking, stop verbalizing, that you can really get in touch with your true mind and really get in touch with higher levels of consciousness. Let's talk about the ego and how to connect with the sun. The ego fears death. The ego fears its own unmaking, because literally the ego is the temporal expression of self. The self when you are submerged in time. The ego knows that it won't last forever, and that's why it is afraid to die. However, there is the eternal self, the core of who you are. And later in the visual aspect of the broadcast, when I draw that central timeline that leads to ascension and exiting the wormhole of this level of reality, that is the core that I am speaking about. It is like the arrow that is aligned with infinity, and that arrow does not meet the membrane of death. That arrow and the consciousness that resides on that arrow doesn't have to just hand in its life experience at the moment of death and say, oh, by the way, I lived as this human and this is what I experienced. That arrow gives real-time broadcasts. Through meditation and mindfulness, we are able to connect with the sun while we're still alive, and through doing so, stay alive forever. Because when you conform to the higher dimensional harmonic structure of consciousness, you are alive. And when you do not conform, when your energy patterns go in a different direction than the overarching energy patterns of the cosmos, you die. This is how to live forever, as well as how to travel on a network of stellar consciousness. It takes a lot of cultivation of consciousness in order to perform these maneuvers, which is why it is understood that it might just be easier for some not very advanced in terms of consciousness civilizations to just build a machine to do it. And this is the idea of the divergent space races and cultures that exist. And I would counsel you or give you advice that you would want to interact with beings that travel on the network of stellar consciousness, because it's a system that runs on unconditional love. It is not possible to be a part of that system if you are an unloving being, or if your actions or behaviors or the energetic presence that the tone that you're creating is less than loving. You can't get on the network. It's like a phone call that you cannot make unless your voice is loving. And to contrast that, those are the beings you would wish to interact with. You would probably not wish to interact with beings that are not loving enough to travel on the stellar network. The only way those beings can get from place to place is by building a sophisticated machine that takes them somewhere. And I'm telling you, when you get to these levels of high sophistication and love, you would never think of making a machine to do something that essentially the organism of the cosmos is created to do. The purpose of the cosmos is to transport consciousness, to have consciousness flow on its journey. However, as I stated before, consciousness needs to flow at the right time. This is like saying you need to listen to the great conductor, which is telling you about the great musical score written by the great composer. Play the right notes at the right time according to the great conductor. That's like saying, think the right thoughts with your consciousness, go in the right direction with your consciousness at the right time, according to the great symphony of the cosmos. So in order to travel on the stellar network, you have to be, quote-unquote, a good musician of consciousness. You have to learn how to play your instrument, and your instrument is not only your physical being, it's the totality of your being. You are a full spectrum being. You are not only a physical being, you've also got emotions, intellect, unconditional love, communication or truth, insight, and the connection to that which is higher. These are all of your levels of being. When all of those levels of density are in nested harmonic proportion, and all of your waves are moving coherently, and I've described coherent waves are like laser light. Laser light lines up at all of the peaks and troughs of a wave so that they are like soldiers that all march together, as opposed to random people in a crowd that go any way they wish. When you cultivate your consciousness, you are lining up the energy that flows throughout your chakras, energy of your consciousness, so that it is coherent. Then, when you are subjected to higher dimensional forces and states of consciousness, You are not unmade. One is not unmade. One may withstand the unbelievable pressures and twisting and turning forces of consciousness as it is flowing without being unmade. So the ego is the part of you that would be unmade. If you can imagine a sonic jewelry cleaner where you submerge, a wedding ring or something like that into this bath of cleaning solution, and then it is agitated with high vibration sonic waves. And this, vibrates away all the stuff that encrusts the jewels. And so you can see the beautiful clarity, the brilliance of the jewels more clearly. This is what happens to one's consciousness when you are submerged within the stellar network. When you take a sun bath and you are submerged in the network of consciousness that is the galactic entity and the stars, it vibrates away all of the aspects of self that are just temporary. They're temporal. It's the ego. It's not the true core of who you are. And when you identify with your core, it's like saying, I took off my t-shirt and I left it on the floor. I left behind that aspect of self. It was temporary. It wasn't my true self. You do not identify with the dirty laundry that you just put on the floor. However, many people in their life, many space races that are not yet sophisticated, still identify with the t-shirt, with their temporal sense of self. They are afraid to go through the stellar network because they know that they will no longer carry with them through to the other side these parts that will be vibrated away. They're not eternal aspects of self. The only parts that come with you through this stellar network of consciousness are the parts that are based in unconditional love. Now, as an Earth human, you might have had this experience where you had a person in your life or an old relative who died, and during their life they drove you crazy. Maybe it was the way they slapped their dentures within their mouth, like slapping mouth movements, or maybe they were critical of your clothing or your rock and roll music. I'm thinking of like a stereotypical old grandfather or old grandmother. And during their life, boy, grandma or grandpa just drove you crazy. But then after they die, all you think of are the fond, tender, loving moments that you had together. Like grandmother braided my hair when I was a little girl, or grandfather, taught me how to pick tomatoes out in his garden. Some kind gesture is what remains. And the things that drove you crazy about them are not the things that remain. And the answer to that is that the things that drove you crazy or agitated you or that you didn't like, those were temporal aspects of self. They were not based in pure unconditional love. They were just idiosyncrasies of the moment. And the things that really stayed with you, real gestures of love, are what remain when a person dies. And so that might have been something that someone gave you, or an activity that you did together, or something that they said that was truly loving. But it's a real, powerful, experienced experiment in what is love. Because love is the only thing that transits between dimensions. This is important. Love is carried over lifetimes. Love is carried between dimensions or within different realms or across consciousnesses. The lower aspects of self, those do not translate. So I'd like to speak a little bit about what this experience would be like, what it would look like, what it would feel like. And now I'll contrast with what it's not going to be first. It's not going to be, a physical disc that comes out of the sky and falls down to earth, and the little ladder comes out and physical beings come out of that physical container. No, what it will be is a rearrangement of your visual field into a new reality. This type of travel is the type of travel of consciousness journeying. So you can be sitting on your front porch in a perfectly comfortable rocking chair, looking at your garden or looking at a tree, and imagine that tree rearranging the visual information of what you're looking at, rearranging into a new structure or a new space or a different person being there. And that eventually you will be able to speak with that person, understanding that that being doesn't live on Earth, doesn't live in the same realm or dimension as you. They might be on a vastly different timeline. They might be in the future. They might be in the past. They might be in a place that is not accessible by physical vehicles that you put physical gas into. This is birth of a new dimension. This is how can you speak with consciousnesses that are from vastly different places or are moving at vastly different rates. And P.S., those are the very beings that you wish to speak with. Beings that are literal and physical and linear are subjected to the same limits of consciousness that Earth's surface humans are currently being subjected to. And the idea is that we are meant to cultivate our consciousness until we are no longer stuck to the surface of our planet. I've spoken about this and taught about this extensively as ascension being a change in your frequency. So we are increasing the rate at which you vibrate, shortening your wavelength, making it so that you can connect directly to the source of consciousness and our current local broadcaster, the sun in its sky, without intermediaries such as chloroplasts. So it's like saying you can, quote-unquote, plug directly into the sun and get all the nourishment that you need directly from the sun without having to eat plants or live on a planet to support your plants, and eventually create your own microclimate around your own individual body so that you can plug into the nearest star, get all the nourishment that you need from that star, not have to eat anyone or anything, and basically be your own floating totality, your own floating world or miniature planet. This is ascension. This is raising your own personal, individual vibration to the point that you no longer have to be tied to the planet in order to survive. And then, so this is what Earth's surface humans look at this as the pinnacle of what is possible. And it is to an Earth surface human. It is not the end of the journey. So to an Earth surface human, there used to be only one option, death. Now there's death and ascension, meaning you do not have to die in ordinary physical corporeal death, hit the membrane, be recycled back to the beginning. You have in this lifetime the opportunity to affiliate your consciousness with the doorway to infinity that is at the center of your being, and give real-time broadcasts to the sun and the stellar network about what it's like to live here and walk around here. P.S. I do it all the time. I'm a taste bud on the tongue of God. I eat my food, I breathe my air and smell aromas and have life experiences, and all of it is in partnership with my own highest consciousness that gave me this body so that I could walk around and have all of these experiences. And the journey doesn't have to end. The physical presence can be transformed so that you have continuity of consciousness. So this is also the idea that travelers of pure consciousness can use different containers for the same consciousness. I'm using that word a lot. Let's look at masters of the Far East, like the idea of Tibetan Buddhists. They have an extensive lineage that goes back many, many generations. So, for example, the current Karmapa is the 17th Karmapa, and he is that entity's 17th container. This is an entity that has achieved continuity of consciousness. It has cultivated its non-physical energy presence to be coherent, so that when it exits this level of reality or this realm, it doesn't fly apart into a million pieces and be unmade. It associates fully with its core persona and goes into a new body. and forms a new identity. And the new identity knows who its core persona is. And the new identity with each lifetime knows, I'm this version of the core persona. This is the idea of the highest levels of the lamas of the Far East. Or some people have called themselves Melchizedek. This is like a self-proclaimed version of the same experience where one might say, I know who I am from previous lifetimes. I know that I am this particular container for consciousness. And it is similar to my own experience of being a walk-in, understanding that this consciousness within this container is a distinct consciousness from the consciousness that used to live in this container, okay? So we are now making distinctions about containers. Well, true star travelers understand that they can exit a container in one distant reality, go into the stellar network, travel through vast physical distances or times, and then have their consciousness be put into a new container in a new reality. And this used to happen all the time in what is now known as ancient Atlantis, but we could call it the time before the fall of consciousness, when avataric containers for consciousness were here in the physical realm on Earth, and non-earthly, hyperdimensional, non-physical beings were able to travel through pure consciousness and come into a physical vehicle here, walk, talk, interact, experience, and then leave the physical vehicle and go somewhere else on their journey. And this was all done consensually on a network of love. It's very, very different than being a body snatcher. And people, when I tell them my journey of being a walk-in, sometimes if they're fear-based, they go there, they say, wow, I hope you didn't kill the previous occupant so you could have her body. And I say, of course, no, never. This is not a body snatching situation. This is all done consensually and on a bridge of love. So I came into this realm on a bridge of love, and I shall exit this realm on a bridge of love and continue my trajectory. And this is also what the planetary consciousness is doing, and even what the stellar consciousness is doing. So as I'm preparing to get ready for the visual presentation, and then I'll do a little wrap up, I'm speaking here about the source, where we are coming from, coalescing into a physical material body here, and then returning to the source means returning to a non-physical state. And we can transform what we have experienced in the physical. I don't say you literally bring your physical molecules with you. No, of course not. You don't bring that with you. Imagine digitizing your physical analog experience. It's like saying, I had a tongue with taste buds and I used it to eat some delicious fried chicken, and I made a perfect recording, like a memory of that experience, and that memory is non-physical. And my non-physical self can contain that memory for as long as it wants to and access it any time. And this is how we will move into the next dimension. We will not eat literal physical fried chicken anymore. However, we will share with each other nourishment that comes through the filter of our memories of physical food. And we can certainly share with each other the gift of the memory of delicious fried chicken or wonderful chocolate cake or whatever was your favorite food when you had a physical body. So I'm now going to get going on the Educreations recording in order to share some of the visual representations and diagrams of these concepts. And again, you will be able to access the full visual recording by clicking on the link for episode 46 that's on the UCY Twitter page for Birth of a New Dimension. So getting going on this recording now. What I'm doing right now is highlighting this central portion of the figure right there inside of the person. When you look at that, that's what I'm referring to when I speak about the doorway to infinity that is inside of each one of us. It is the understanding that our chakras, or the energy centers on our body, are in nested proportions, and these are harmonically derived. Harmonics being the mathematical structure or numeric structure of the proportion of light waves. So the harmonic pattern that in which these chakras are nested conforms to the flow of energy that is happening at a macroscopic and microscopic level. And when you are alive, your energy system is conforming to that higher dimensional energy format. When you no longer conform to that energy format, when your chakras are not in the right shape, it is called death. Now, I'm going to begin down here. First, if you look at this painting, first I'm going to just outline what I call the torus when I'm talking about this basic donut shape. All right, so now you know what I'm talking about there. And at the bottom of the donut shape, I am now highlighting in a light blue color what I call the time vortex. And if you are not accessing the visual aspect of this, I've just drawn what looks like a funnel in cross-section. And coming upward from the bottom, the wide part of the funnel, are lines, and all of the lines terminate in the curved part of the funnel, except for this one central line. I'm going to make it in green so that hopefully everyone can see it properly. This one central line does not terminate in the edge of the funnel or the membrane of death. It continues onward. It goes infinitely on its journey. It does not end. So I would like everyone to understand that when I draw this simplified drawing of the time vortex like this, that what I'm actually referring to is this area, the lower half of one torus. I told you this was going to be very visual, and that's why I had to draw it for you. But it must be understood that each chakra is actually comprised of two tori at 90-degree angles. So if this is one chakra, and I have just drawn what could be described as a line drawing of two circles next to one another, if I turn that chakra at 90-degree angles, I now have another one like this overlapping it. And now what I have is a line drawing of four circles or hula hoops that all converge at the center. And you can see this negative space, negative not meaning evil or malevolent, but negative meaning like the part of a coffee cup where the coffee actually goes. This negative space that I am now highlighting is analogous to this purple negative space in the painting. And that is a higher dimension. It's another dimension in there. And you cannot get there directly. If I'm a red arrow and I'm trying to get into that space directly, I literally cannot do it because of the flowing membrane of death. So this edge here, the edge of this hula hoop, this is not a static piece of energy. Now this is why I have to draw this. I would like for you all to understand that all of this is in motion. So now I'm going to take a bright color like yellow and tell you that we're beginning this journey right here at the center. That is the singularity, or the zeroth dimension, or the doorway to infinity, similar to what is going on in the sun, where all of the photons emerge from that place in the very, very center of our star. Well, this is where all of the timelines, possibilities, and probabilities emerge from the center of your own being. All of these energy patterns emerge from that source and return to that source. So I just drew a big giant circle that comes out of this human person's heart, goes around in a big circle, and then comes right back to that area. And I'm going to do another one on the opposite side because this is all symmetrical. And when you do that, then you understand that there's a flow of energy. Now I'm going to use another color. I hope you can really see this. This energy is flowing downward. It's like a waterfall flowing downward. And that waterfall, water is made of flowing molecules of water. This flowing membrane of energy is made of flowing molecules of consciousness. Each one of these little green circles that I'm making right now is meant to represent the final denouement of a timeline. So also you must understand that I'm drawing these simplified cross-sections, diagrams, as if the timelines travel in a line, but they actually travel in a spiral. So instead of just traveling upward in a line, they actually travel around in a spiral, upward like that. But in order to make it easier to draw the diagrams, I draw them like lollipops, simplified lines that have a dot at the top. And the line is every moment of a person's life, from the beginning, their birth, up until the very end, which is their death. And by the time they die, they have accumulated all of their life experiences in, you could call it your memory banks or your neurology. And this is what I was talking about when I was saying that humans were designed and created to be real-time broadcasters, but because of the hacked human operating system, instead of transmitting all of your life experiences and thoughts and feelings and memories while they're occurring back to the solar consciousness and back to the great galactic supermassive black hole so that the galaxy knows what you're doing, most people save it all up on their hard drive and don't turn it in until the moment of death. This is what happens in every situation except for on the ascension timeline. So the ascension timeline is this central timeline. I'm going to draw it in yellow. I hope you're seeing it, and I'm really highlighting it a lot so you can see it. The central timeline, this one right here, that does not find its final denouement on the surface of the membrane of death, but instead finds that tiny little wormhole that exits this level of reality and goes to the next level. This is like the one arrow that actually reaches the bullseye of the target. And the bullseye is the source and your destination, coming in a giant journey of consciousness from the source into physical reality and back to the source, which is also your destination. This is what I'm talking about when I'm speaking about experts on their journey of star travel. We are experts on our journey of star travel, and we will not leave this place by getting into a giant clank-clank metal spaceship and flying elsewhere. Oh no, I laugh at that silly assertion. We will all get into our vehicles of ascension and exit through the wormhole, which is this little thing that I just drew in yellow. And our vehicles of ascension, this is the coherent light body that you and I and everyone should be practicing cultivating, and that I've drawn this picture of in order to hopefully inspire people to cultivate it more. The non-physical aspects of consciousness, your light body. So when you see me walking down the street, you might recognize I'm wearing a rainbow sweater. You might not perceive with your physical eyes that I am also surrounded by a rainbow of light, but with your non-physical eyes you might perceive it. And we are all moving into the realm where we reactivate our higher faculties and we are better able to perceive with our non-physical eyes. So just continuing with what I've drawn here, each one of these green dots represents the last moment of a version of you. And you also have to understand, I'm now highlighting, how about this whole giant area down here, I'm now highlighting in purple. That's the lower half of one torus. But this is all energy that is flowing together. So that lower half of one torus is one life experience. I'm now highlighting a totally different life. This is up here, up above this one particular person. And guess what? You have two more that are not in this particular drawing. And this energy, I'm flowing in purple now, out from the source into reality and then back to the source. You can see how the flowing membrane of death coming from one chakra flows into the next chakra. This is to show you graphically that you have many lives that are intertwined within one chakra structure. Many timelines and probabilities and possibilities of awareness of many different experiences are all being graphically represented by this grouping of timelines and probabilities and possibilities. Let's also speak very briefly about what this means in terms of death when a person dies. I'm just drawing two of these time vortexes here. So this one that I'm drawing in black is the primary one. We'll say that's one person's life. Now I'm going to draw a different time vortex that overlaps with the first one, but only slightly. Only some of the timelines of this red vortex overlap with the timelines of the black vortex. As I said, this is a very visually oriented teaching. If you're not looking at what I'm drawing, you could imagine two funnel shapes that overlap one another at the periphery. And the area of overlapping, like in a Venn diagram, that area of coincidence, those are the only areas or timelines or possibilities in that area where those consciousnesses could meet and interact. There are vast areas that I'm now highlighting in purple on that person's timeline where they never got a chance to interact with that person in red. And it gets further, because when we are describing lives at the periphery of the time vortex, out here at the edge, those are the distortions. Those are the aspects of your journey that are less true to your core persona. And the infinity timeline that I'm highlighting now in purple, that goes straight up and down and goes directly from the source and right back to the source, not tilted at an angle. That core timeline represents your essence, or the true nature of who and what you are. And our journey here is to circulate closer and closer and closer to that core timeline until we figure out who we really are and we get out of here. And P.S., that realization, that final moment of realization when you get out of here, the thought that you have is, I am God. When you make that complete circuit coming from the source and returning back to the source, when you journey from your own heart back to the heart of where you came from, you make a spark or complete the circuit, quote unquote, and the thought that is made is a thought within you as an individual and simultaneously a thought within the galactic whole. And the thought literally is, I am God. And if you can imagine the incredible power and profundity of what would happen if many organisms on the surface of Earth simultaneously had that awakening and thought that thought and thought it in connection with the planet and in connection simultaneously with our star and the galaxy within which we are submerged. That would be an incredibly profound reverberation from the microcosmic to the macrocosmic of this truth that is the foundation truth of what we are experiencing. I am God. And that is said from my personal perspective. Each one of us on our journey must say this from our own personal perspective. So to paraphrase, when you create this circuit, you will not think Aurora is God, even though Aurora is God. You will think that you yourself are God. And that is our journey. That is what we are here to do. So the first thing is understanding that When we are in alignment with that central core, we are aligning with our own divinity. When we are aligned not with that core, and now I'm drawing a purple line that faces to the membrane of death, when we are at a canted angle, we are moving away from life. We're moving away from the harmonic structure of being conforming to this larger, higher consciousness structure of energy. We're moving away from life, we're moving towards death, we're moving away from our core consciousness and who we really are and who we are as a divine being. And also understand that when we are interacting with people in life, we might be interacting with only the edge or the periphery of who they really are, not with their core. So I just drew two different lines. One is a purple line at the edge of this red time vortex, and one is a purple line at the center of the time vortex. The purple line at the edge, this is not who this person really is, but that's who you're interacting with if you're in that zone of coincidence. You're not interacting with them as this refined central possibility, who that person is as an ascended master. So this is a graphic representation of the understanding that each one of us has within our life possibility and probability diagram, the totality of experience, from being the worst unrecalcitrant sinner to being the best highest consciousness saint. I'm using these words euphemistically, from being a murderer, rapist, horrible person at the periphery to being a really loving, truly refined, compassionate individual at the core. And because of where you are interacting, I am now making a little circle that shows the overlapping of these two time diagrams. Neither of those two people are connecting their core with their core. We are representing here two beings that are on their periphery, interacting on the periphery. Now I'm going to draw something that represents people interacting on their core. So here is timeline 1. There's the core, and here's a different one in orange where this person is interacting. Oops, make my pen work. There we go. Now this person, their periphery is interacting with your core. And this would be like a person who met an ascended master but was not an ascended master themselves. And they said, I'm only a lowly criminal, or I'm not a good person, but I saw you in your highest light and it perceived you on your best timeline. Now let's look at another one. Well, I didn't know how we would do this, but this would be a timeline where we have one person as an ascended master and another person as an ascended master. They are both overlapping. Both of their core timelines are meeting each other. I would say that is heaven. When we have every single one of us aligned with our core essence, our highest consciousness, inner consciousness world, and we are all interacting and overlapping with each other, it's like saying we have achieved heaven. We are in mastery, we are in the next highest dimension. And all of this periphery, everything that I'm highlighting now in orange, that has all just been the backstory or the precursor or what we had to go through in order to reach these levels of alignment. So I hope that you can understand what I was trying to get across with this simultaneously recording this visual presentation. These are not static images. These are static snapshots of the flow of energy. Energy is flowing. The energy that is flowing is consciousness. It is awareness. Last week I described it like the needle on the record. Your consciousness or your awareness is the needle on the record that is causing the song of your life to play. And the song of your life is this experience of being refined from out here on the periphery, either a tiny baby that could hardly be born and then died from pathogenic viruses instantaneously, or an evil person who didn't know that harming others doesn't serve the totality. We all had to go through those levels of experience, learning what it is like to be totally wrong and mistaken, and then going back to the beginning and trying it again, until gradually, we are refined to this central position where we understand what works and what doesn't work, what serves and what does not serve. And when I talk about serve, I'm talking about serving the trajectory of consciousness. Infinity is the trajectory of consciousness, moving in an infinite direction, an unfettered journey that never ends. That is consciousness. That is what we are doing. And first of all, infinity can be achieved within limitations. If you can imagine two goalposts, or point A and point B, and that we can send energy infinitely back and forth in a line between these two goalposts, just infinitely reflecting it back and forth. So infinity does not necessarily have to take place within an infinite amount of space, but we are speaking about the infinite journey. Let's also talk about the idea of infinite fractality, energy that continues onward into ever higher degrees of complexity as we go into higher and lower levels of scale. So fractal means a thing within a tiny perfect version of a thing, within a tiny perfect version of a thing, within a tiny perfect version of a thing. And we keep getting smaller and smaller and greater, but we keep having the same tiny perfect version of that thing. This is also an example of an infinite journey within a limited space. If you're interested, you can do a little bit of research. Research a Sierpinski triangle, and then you will get that.
So that is the end of the visual presentation, and in the last moment that I have, I would just like to tie it all together by saying that the central core timeline in the diagrams that one is always trying to align oneself with is synonymous with connecting to the stellar network of consciousness. When you're on that timeline, you are giving those real-time broadcasts or biofeedback to the person being that emanated your consciousness, telling it about your life, telling it about your life experience, and it is an endless continuum. It's like saying, even though you are distant from the source, you are not disconnected from it at all. Thank you so much for being with me on this journey. Please tune in next week as we continue to give birth to this beautiful new dimension.